Hey, you all. Sorry, I'm trying to still get stuff set up back here because that was so quick. I ran out of time. This is a horrible, horrible, horrible murder to me. Look at those, every one of them beautiful souls. And the two knew each other from childhood. Can you all hear me good? Are y'all even here? Okay, good. Yes, Sharon, this one's horrible. I got drawn to it. I don't get drawn to a lot of cases. I really don't. It's really, and I can't wait till more information comes out because the two roommates that made it alive, I just don't see how they didn't hear nothing. We still got a few minutes before the press conference comes on, like 11 minutes. We'll just sit here and chit chat. But yeah, uh, see if I can find a little short video I got saved to play. I'm very sad over it. Yeah. Because I've been saving stuff to that playlist too. Right. Maybe I don't. I'm not new on that. That's short. So I don't want something long you're gonna. Not really new either. Okay, this was 4 hours ago. Let's watch that. It's a news clip. Just a few minutes until the press conference comes on.
Has yet to be identified after A suspect has yet to be identified after 4 University of Idaho students were found stabbed to death in an off-campus group home this month in a shocking quadruple murder that has devastated and terrified the small community of Moscow, Idaho. So here's what we know so far. On November 13th, Moscow police responded to a 911 call around noon reporting an unconscious person, and then they found Madison Mogen, 21, Kaylee Gun, the small community of Moscow, Idaho. So here's what we know so far. On November 13th, Moscow police responded to a 911 call around noon reporting an unconscious person, and then they found Madison Mogen, 21, Kaylee Guncalves, 21, Dana Kernodle, 20, and Ethan Chapin, 20, all stabbed to death in this group home. So the 3 women were roommates and they lived there. Ethan Chapin was the boyfriend of one of the women, Dana Kernodle.
Police say the 911 call came from one of 2 surviving roommates who apparently slept through the murders, which took place on the 2nd and 3rd floors. Police have ruled out all occupants of the home as suspects. The coroner's report states the 4 victims were likely stabbed as they slept. No signs of sexual assault were detected, and some victims did have defensive wounds. Rumors that one of the female victims had a stalker have circulated among online true crime communities in the days since the murders. However, police say they have been unable to verify this. Also, the source of speculation online are the over 10 phone calls made by two of the victims within an hour of their murders. Those calls, none of which were answered, are confirmed to have been made to the ex-boyfriend of Kaylee Goncalves. However, people say they have cleared him of involvement in the killing.
So this is this is a really obviously shocking and terrifying and bizarre mystery here, because this happened, almost 2 weeks ago now, and the police seem pretty stumped, which is unusual for a crime, this with this many bodies in a university. You'd think surveillance camera footage, or people would know, like, oh, maybe it's that weird guy who's been harassing them or something. For police to have no idea who it was for this long after such a kind of appalling group murder in a situation like that, this is extremely rare in the modern era, where there are cameras everywhere and where forensic sort of abilities are very, very advanced. So it's a weird one. They've apparently ruled out this boyfriend. Apparently the phone calls made are not actually all that suspicious, because this individual, she was known for making a lot of calls, even very late at night. If she didn't get you, she'd call you a bunch of times. So they were saying that's characteristic behavior for her, not a red flag or anything. And apparently that guy has an alibi. They've ruled out, I think, the Uber driver who brought the other two home that night. The surviving roommates who lived on the first floor, they essentially just, they had a late night. All of them had late night at various social gatherings. So they just they woke up late in the morning, noon, and found an unconscious body and called the police. And then there was blood everywhere. So it's really
so horrible.
Yeah,
it's so horrible, and it does seem especially senseless, given that the ground floor and basement roommates were completely bypassed, which is not necessarily what you might expect. If it's a random killing, you come in, you just take what you can get, you kill as catch can, as it were. But even though there does seem to be something, how do you make sense of that? Going upstairs, killing people, not even just targeting women exclusively, killing the woman who was in bed with her boyfriend. It's a horrible tragedy. The fact that it's on a college campus where you feel so relatively safe, and there are eyes and, to your point, surveillance everywhere. What a gruesome and horrible story.
Yeah, and there was no signs of forced entry. They have not found the murder weapon yet. They can tell from the stab wounds pretty exactly what kind of knife it was. And like we said,
well, do we know? Is it more like a kitchen knife or a tactical knife? Do we have a sense that this is the one who hunts and maybe planned this and brought a knife for killing?
I don't think it's a kitchen knife type deal. That's a good question. I don't have the answer to that handy. But the police said, put out a statement saying they didn't think the campus was as horrible as this is, they don't think students of the campus is in general danger. And then they basically retracted that statement. They were like, well, we don't know why we said that, because
how can you tell?
Right, maybe they have a killer on the loose. So it's very the story's getting a lot of coverage, I think, deservedly, because it is so out of the ordinary. It raises a kind of serial killer, Ted Bundy type character. Obviously, these were all known to each other. These aren't not a long string of targeted killings or something, but it's increasingly very rare in our day and age for police to be kind of this stumped in a case where they're trying to solve. Obviously, police don't clear murders, inner city crime, et cetera, the kind of indifference, et cetera. I'm not trying to over glamorize police's ability to solve them, but in cases like this where they're trying and it's out of the ordinary and there's cameras, so well lit home, it's weird to not have more of an idea what's going on. So I think we'll be continuing to follow updates in this, and we'll see if the kind of sleuth attitude, everybody on social media now trying to solve these crimes, I can't remember the name of the woman, the Instagram woman who went missing, who was killed by her boyfriend.
Petito?
Yeah, right. So.
Okay, well, I got the press conference pulled up, so we'll see. Let me see if Nope, they don't have a chat. Excuse me, I just kept burping. I'm sorry. That's very rude. Excuse me. Oh, here we go.
Sorry, I forgot the most important part of my job. I just want to let you guys know that there will be a question and answer time. We're going to try and extend it today to be a little bit longer. That way, more people have the opportunity to ask questions. We have a gentleman who will be passing around a microphone, and he does not know what organization you're from, and so this will go purely random. So please keep questions to one or two, and we'll try and get to as many people as possible. So thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Chief James Fry with the Moscow Police Department. Joining me today is Captain Roger Lanier with the Moscow Police Department, Moscow Deputy City Supervisor Tyler Palmer, Colonel Kedrick Wills of the Idaho State Police, University of Idaho President Scott Green, University of Idaho Dean of Students Lane Eccles, and Latah County Prosecutor Bill Thompson. We are thankful for all the tips and leads the public has provided in Ethan, Xana, Kaylee, and Madison's murder investigation. No bit of information is too small, and every tip will be pursued. So far, this information has helped investigators build a picture of the areas of interest and relationships these four had with each other and our community. We still believe there's more information to be gathered, which will continue creating a window through which we view this case. We all want to understand why this happened and what drove someone to do this. Families of those involved, our entire community, deserve to know. If we ask anyone with any information related to what happened, these four were in our community, their interaction with others, and whether they expressed concern or commented about someone or something strange, to get that information to us. Even if you don't believe it is relevant, investigators will review and determine if and how your information builds a picture. Sometimes what a video or picture doesn't show is equally as important as what might be there. Information on how to submit tips and updates on the investigation can be found on the Moscow Police Department webpage. We continue moving forward to understand why this occurred in our community and seek answers, bring justice for the victims and their loved ones, because they deserve it. I personally want you to know we care and we will continue to work hard to get these answers for these individuals. At this time, I'd like to introduce Captain Roger Lanier for an update on what we can currently share about this investigation.
Good afternoon. I'm Captain Roger Lanier with the Moscow Police Department. I want to assure you first off that the loss of Xana, Kaylee, Madison, and Ethan remains the highest priority for the Moscow Police Department. We will continue putting all of our resources into investigating and solving these murders. Investigators are prepared to work through the Thanksgiving holiday to continue their efforts. I also want to express our sincere appreciation to the Idaho State Police, the FBI, University of Idaho, and the Latah County Sheriff's Office for their assistance. And I especially want to thank the community of Moscow for their outpouring of support through this incredibly difficult time. Today I'm going to recap in brief what we know. I'm going to provide some new information, and I'm going to address some rumors. On the evening of November 12th and into the early morning hours of November 13th, Kaylee and Madison arrived home at approximately 1:45 a.m. after visiting a local bar and a street food vendor. Ethan and Xana were also out in the community at Sigma Chi, and they arrived home at approximately 1:45 a.m. Two surviving roommates who were also out in the community arrived home at approximately 1 a.m. Later, on the morning of November 13th at 11:58 a.m., a 911 call was placed. The call reported an unconscious person. The call originated from inside the residence, and a surviving roommate's cell phone was used. During that call, the dispatcher spoke to multiple people who were on scene. Moscow police officers responded and found two victims, two on the second floor and two on the third floor of 1122 King Road. The results of autopsies indicated that the four were stabbed multiple times and were likely asleep during the attack. Some had defensive wounds, and there was no sign of sexual assault. We do not believe the following individuals were involved: the two surviving roommates, the male seen in a grub truck video circulating on the internet, the private party who drove Kaylee and Madison home, any of the individuals who spoke to the dispatcher on the 911 call. We're also aware of a male whom Madison and Kaylee had called several times the morning of November 13th. We do not suspect that individual. Detectives have canvassed the neighborhoods looking for evidence, physical evidence, video surveillance, and they've contacted numerous residents to see if anybody may have seen or heard anything. They continue requesting tips that can be sent to our tip line or called into our tip line. The specific areas that we're interested in are detailed on maps on our city website and our Facebook page, but as stated earlier, generally south of Taylor Avenue to Moose River Drive and the area west of US 95 over to the Arboretum. We have heard mention that Kaylee stated she may have had a stalker. Detectives have been looking into that, and to this point have been unable to corroborate the statement, although we continue to seek information and tips regarding that report. No suspects have been named or arrested, and we continue looking for what we believe to be a fixed blade knife used in the murders. We have not released the names of any of the subjects who spoke on the 911 call, and we have not released the call itself. Any online reports of the victims being tied and gagged are not accurate. Regarding the resources that we've put forth in this investigation, the Moscow Police Department has 4 detectives, 24 patrol officers, and 5 support staff dedicated to this investigation. The FBI has 22 investigators in Moscow and 20 additional agents assigned in various locations, as well as 2 members of the Behavioral Analysis Unit. The Idaho State Police has 20 investigators, a public information team, a forensic services and crime scene team, and 15 uniformed troopers who have been valuable in helping provide community patrols and safety patrol. We very much appreciate their support. This is our highest priority, it will remain our highest priority. We owe that to the families. At this time, I would like to introduce Colonel Kedrick Wills from the Idaho State.
Thank you, Captain, and thank you for those that are in attendance today for your attendance. We really appreciate this. What has affected Moscow and the community here has affected all of us in Idaho. We have a way in Idaho that the community can come together in tough times, and this is one of those tough times. Leads from the community are important, and as the captain spoke, no tip is too small, and we would urge anybody that has any information whatsoever to please provide that to help us solve this case. The lead agency of this case is Moscow Police Department with Chief Fry and his dedicated team of professionals, and the Idaho State Police's role is to support them and their good work here. There is an awful lot of efforts going on behind the scenes, and I'll explain why it's behind the scenes in just a moment. But what can't be seen isn't always known of what we do in law enforcement, and I'd like to explain that in just a moment. But the Idaho State Police and the FBI continue to provide resources to this investigation. I would like to speak for just a moment, if I could, not about this specific case, but rather an overview of how cases are investigated, so that maybe it'll give some sense of the why of the timeline here. We understand you want answers. We want answers too. But these take time, and if I could explain just a minute about the process here of what we go through just generally in investigations. So we use in advanced investigative techniques and crime scene processing. So what happens when a call comes in, the original officers, the first officers that respond to a scene, and then once that they've got their work there and determined that they need some additional investigative assistance, then they call investigators to come and help process that scene. And oftentimes it requires the forensics team to help process that scene. And when I say process the scene, what we're looking for any evidence that may help us to be able to find the people or person responsible for what we're seeing. And so we're collecting biological evidence, we're collecting latent evidence, whether it's shoe prints or tire marks or anything like that. We're trying to collect that evidence. We're trying to we do that through photographs. We do that through 3D mapping to be able to map the scene. We identify and we mark evidence, and then we collect that evidence. And then we look for any evidence that we think may be helpful. And once that is done, then we package all that evidence up and we send it off to forensic laboratories to be analyzed to see if it can help provide clues to what's happening. All of this takes an immense amount of time. The reason this is important to understand is because it's important that while this is such a tragic circumstance we find ourselves in law enforcement, we believe we owe this to the surviving families to get this right. And so we're not willing to sacrifice speed for quality. We do testing for blood, we do latent print processing, any documentations for anything at the scene so that we can reconstruct that scene at a later date. If I could share just a few statistics of this particular crime scene. At this crime scene, we collected 103 pieces of individual evidence. We took approximately 4,000 photographs. We've conducted multiple 3D scans of the residents, and we have hundreds of hours used by technicians and investigators, including our forensics team and detectives from multiple agencies. We processed over 1,000 total tips and conducted 150 interviews. I hope that you understand that gives a little bit of a perception of just how complex this case is. We have the utmost confidence in this investigation and that this investigation will be done right. We ask you and we ask the public to please remain patient as this investigation unfolds. And please rely on official sources of information. We really appreciate the media assistance. We know you have a job to do. We know that you're professionals and you do it to the best of your ability. And we're thankful that you're here, because without you, we could not get the correct information to the community that could help us solve this. So I can't overemphasize how much I appreciate and we appreciate in law enforcement your willingness to do. What you are doing matters. And it matters in what we are committed to doing, and that is to the best way we can think of to honor these victims and their families is to investigation correctly. Finally, I'd like to share that I've been in regular contact with Idaho's Governor Brad Little throughout this investigation. Governor Little is making available up to $1 million for expenses related to this ongoing investigation. As you heard, the resources that are here in Moscow and throughout with this investigation, you can see that those expenses would add up quickly. Like all Idahoans, Governor Little is deeply saddened by the loss of these 4 bright and promising young lives. And he's making sure the state of Idaho provides all of the resources possible to ensure that the person or persons responsible for this are brought to justice. And now I'd like to turn the time over to the University of Idaho President Scott Green.
Good afternoon, I'm Scott Green, President of the University of Idaho. We deeply appreciate the kind words of support we have been receiving from our alumni and friends, as well as many others who may not know us but have taken time to reach out. People are donating to the victims' GoFundMe pages and the Bruce Pittman Fund for Students in Need. They're buying personal devices for our students and continuing to look for other ways that they can help. This is what it means to be a vandal. In the last 24 hours, we have sent updated communications to our students, employees, parents, and alumni. And in those communications, we discussed campus security, services available to our students and employees, our plans for both remote and live instruction to close the semester, and our plans for a candlelight vigil on November 30. All of this is available on our website. We all want swift justice and continue to work with law enforcement to aid them in any way helpful to their investigation. As the investigation continues, we will better know how to proceed in the new year. We will endeavor to find the balance among safety concerns, the need to grieve, and the long-term needs of all of our students and employees. Through everything we do, we will keep Kaylee, Madison, Xana, and Ethan, as well as their families and friends, in our thoughts and our prayers. Thank you. I'm sorry, I need to introduce Deputy City Supervisor Tyler Palmer.
Good afternoon, my name is Tyler Palmer. I'm Deputy City Supervisor for the City of Moscow. And I'm here today on behalf of Mayor Arthur Betke, the Moscow City Council, and Moscow City Administration. The loss of Kaylee, Madison, and Ethan has sent an overwhelming, palpable wave of grief, confusion, sorrow, and anger through our peaceful community. Mayor Betke, in support of our City Council, has instructed staff to marshal all necessary resources for our law enforcement professionals as they diligently work to ensure the safety of every member of this community and find the person or people responsible for this. The outpouring of support, kindness, and genuine empathy locally and even globally has been a humbling reminder that those who want to help far outnumber those who want to hurt. And we take some solace in that. To all of you who reached out, sent letters and cards, provided food for those working around the clock on this investigation, and offered other resources, we thank you sincerely. These continued acts of charity and humanity remind us why we live in this tight-knit, caring community. The City of Moscow is committed to seeing this investigation through to a successful end, and will continue to dedicate whatever resources are necessary for that effort. We are thankful for the immense support from the University of Idaho, Latah County, Governor Little and his office, the Idaho State Police, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Moscow is my home. And I know we won't be defined by tragedy, but how we respond to it. We mourn the loss of these beautiful young people, and we will relentlessly pursue justice on their behalf. Thank you.
We would like to open it up to any questions, but I would like to ask if there's an Argonaut reporter here I would like to ask, and then second after that, an Evergreen reporter, if there's one in the room. Let's start with the Argonaut, please.
James Torman Aldrich with the Argonaut. I have two questions, if that's all right. Firstly, being what the police presence is going to look like after Thanksgiving break and how long that's going to last.
I'll go ahead and answer. Police presence is going to be very heavy after the break. We have Idaho State Patrol that will also still be in the area. You'll see a high impact of patrol officers and troopers, as well as Lake Tahoe County Sheriff's Department personnel in the area.
And then secondly, will there be any possibility of the release of the 911 phone call, even in transcript form?
Not at this time. That's part of our investigation.
Frankie here, the Daily Evergreen. I guess the Moscow PD press release mentioned looking into hundreds of pieces of information about Kaylee's potential stalker. I was wondering what led you to believe she did have a stalker possibly, and why those pieces of information haven't come up with conclusive results.
I'm actually going to let Captain Lanier answer this question, okay?
Thank you, Chief. We obtained information through some of our interviews that Kaylee had made some comments about a stalker, so that's where that came from. We have followed up looking at specific time frames and specific areas of town. So far, we have not been able to corroborate it, but we're not done looking into that piece of information.
Dan Springer, Fox News. If I can get Captain Lanier. Sir, why not tell the public who the target was? You've said that this was a targeted attack. Why not tell the public who was targeted? If it was multiple people, it would go a long ways to telling the public what you're looking for and who you're looking for, the type of person you're looking for. Why not do that to alleviate some of the fears out there in the community?
Well, first and foremost, we have the integrity of the investigation to preserve. And we feel like that information is integral to us and how we conduct our investigation. Releasing that to the public may or may not flood us with a lot of information that's not relevant or specific to what we're looking at. So we do want more information, but we don't want to put our investigation in jeopardy by releasing what we have. There's always a balance between what you're willing to release versus what you're trying to gather. We told the public very clearly from the beginning that we're looking for a knife. We told the public very clearly from the beginning that we believe it was a targeted attack. I mean, to be honest, you're going to have to trust us on that at this point, because we're not going to release why we think that.
Lauren Patterson, Northwest Public Broadcasting. I see that the FBI set up a special web page just to collect digital information. I'm also curious if any of the investigators can speak to this. Curious if the Wi-Fi hotspot has been tapped at all. It's possible if the suspect had their phone on them, it may have pinged off the Wi-Fi in the residence. Has that been checked on at all?
As I stated, our investigation is looking at every avenue of every piece of evidence we can. The FBI has given us a website for any downloads of video or anything, so we ask people if you have any of that to send it to us.
Thank you. Natasha Chen, CNN. I have a couple of questions here. One, in many homicide cases, the first hours, the first days are so incredibly crucial. Now that we're moving into a window that's further and further away from the incident, does that concern you about the ability to arrest the suspect, or do you have information that you simply can't share with us that makes you confident that you're close to solving it?
I'm going to have a colonel step up and address that, please.
Thank you for the question, and I would like to address it a little more globally than specifically, a little more globally here. Yesterday, as time goes on, I mean, we're time past the initial calls for service and the initial crime. However, we also, as time goes on, are able to process the forensics evidence, any forensics evidence that we may have collected, and so that helps us. And we're also able to process the tips that continue to come in, which may help us. And so
while time in one respect is not beneficial, in another respect it is, because it helps provide us with that whole picture of with all of the information that we're gathering, whether it's evidence or tips or any other information that we're gathering. It may help us to provide a clearer picture, and so it may help answer those questions that we're seeking as well.
Hi, Angela Palermo, Idaho Statesman. I was wondering if there's any evidence that suggests the attacker visited the first floor where the two surviving roommates were.
That information will not be released at this time. It's part of our investigation, and as we stated earlier, there's many things that are involved in an investigation that we will release and things we won't.
Good afternoon, Ashley Soriano, Fox News. I have two questions. Have you considered the possibility of a murder-suicide? Is that something that you guys are considering right now?
That question has been asked previously, not at a press conference. It's certainly something that we looked at in the early part of the investigation. It's not something that we're looking at this time.
And I know some of the investigators' vehicles and police vehicles are coming in and out of the driveway. Do you think that potentially could disturb any tire marks or other evidence?
Yeah, so the question has been asked about why did the crime scene tape expand, and that's not uncommon. When the first officers arrived, they tried to cordon off what they thought was important. We immediately expanded that when the investigators got there to process the scene. And logically, as this progresses, and you've seen this through our press releases, we have expanded it to several areas of the city and, in fact, canvassed entire neighborhoods. So we try very, very hard to uncover every single bit of evidence possible in an area before we move on to the next area. So yes, we've looked at everything that we think we need to look at in and around the crime scene at this point. Well, it's a gravel parking area, so it would be hard to say that.
How are you folks holding up? How are your detectives and officers holding up? And Chief, you mentioned that detectives are prepared to work tomorrow on Thanksgiving. So, what is the expectation that they will be?
That is correct. We're going to have many detectives and agents working all the way through this incident. Our people are dedicated. Our people care about this community. Our people want to ensure the community that we're here to bring safety, and we're here to get resolve on it. So we will continue to push through. We'll give people time off as they need it, and we will continue to take care of them. But we're gonna keep pushing on this until we come to a conclusion.
Chris Mitchell, KLEW. Is there any plans to increase security for the Apple Cup on Friday?
I can't speak to what's going on in the state of Washington. I can only speak to what we're doing here on the campus of the University of Idaho in concert with President Green and his team. We are absolutely, with the Idaho State Police and the Moscow Police Department, we are 100% dedicated to making sure that this continues to be a safe place for students to do what students need to do. And so that's why we have so many uniformed troopers here that aren't necessarily assisting with the investigation, but rather here to help with the campus security. And President Green and his team have been fantastic in helping to strike that balance to make sure that we have law enforcement resources here. So while I can't speak what's going on anywhere else, I can tell you at the University of Idaho, we have a lot of state troopers, a severe increase of state troopers and Moscow police officers here, both on campus as well as throughout the community.
John McDowell, APC News. Are investigators looking at any possible connection to an unsolved double stabbing in the Salem, Oregon area about a year and a half ago? Physically, two people stabbed in their home in the middle of the night. Long knife, no suspect at the point. One died, one survived.
I think we're looking at every avenue, and we have other agencies reaching out to us with other cases and stuff that we are doing follow-up on. We will continue to follow up on those.
Are you aware of that case?
Actually, I had a tip come in on that case, and I forwarded it to our tip line.
Okay. One more question. Can you confirm the bodies have been released to the families or are being closed today?
I believe they have been released to the family, and I know that I believe one of them has already had a funeral.
Destiny Martin with the LCSD Pathfinder. Can you lend any insights into the possibility that the murder weapon is linked to the ROTC program? And also, you mentioned that the analysis unit is here. Will we be able to hear anything from them about a working profile that they possibly have? And on that note, have you guys ruled out the possibility that the killer might be a female?
So we look at every avenue. We're looking at every group of people. Like I said early in our first press conference, we're not going to let any stone go unturned. I believe can you just clarify your second portion of that question? Of the BAU, sorry.
Yes. I would like to know if the BAU has a working profile because when you look at victimology, are you able to tell us who was the first on the scene of death so we may understand, like, if it was a targeted attack, it would make the most sense if they killed one of the roommates first and then maybe the other two. You know, I know
sure.
This is not really kind of topic. My question is, are you guys looking at a working profile? Have they come up with anything new regarding the motive or intention of the killer?
The BAU unit is working diligently to do what they do. Will that be provided? I'm sure that may be provided once the conclusion of this case comes together. They are continually taking in information, reading reports, and gathering information from that.
Catherine Hughes. Amanda Rowley with Crypt2. Seeing some speculation with some cars being searched this past week. Wonder if you can squash some of the rumors and that speculation. Is there anything you can share specifically on the white car out front and a call for diversity?
So I'll have Captain Lanier go ahead and come up with that.
Well, we have looked at a lot of different vehicles. I'm assuming you're referring to the vehicles that were in the parking lot at the time. Yeah, so some of those vehicles belonged to the victims and some belonged to other people in the house. And so for us, that's part of the crime scene. As I mentioned earlier, the crime scene was expanded out through the parking lot. So we wanted to make sure that we looked at those prior to releasing the crime scene. It was part of the initial investigation that night.
And for the university, is there any additional information at this time that you can offer about the candlelight vigil, maybe what we can expect from that, and then any other information you can provide about that ask of the community to light the night on November 30th?
Thank you for that. I'm going to turn this over to Blaine Eccles at this point. He's actually planning the whole
Good afternoon. I'm Blaine Eccles, Dean of Students. The vigil is going to be hosted next Wednesday, November 30th, 5 p.m. We have it scheduled for the administration lawn at the moment. We're going to make a final determination on location early next week, just because we're waiting for the weather window to get closer so we feel comfortable that that's where it will be located. We're anticipating a large turnout of community members as well as university members, students, faculty, and staff at that particular event. And all of the families that have been invited to join us from that aspect of it. The response has just been absolutely beautiful and overwhelming to the love that has been provided to the institution as well as the family members. The Light the Night event that you're talking about, while I don't have a lot of details on that, is set to coincide at the same time, just so that people that can't be here in person as part of the vigil are going to be able to participate remotely as well. The vigil will be live streamed, and it's safe to say that the Vandal family is going to unite and come together to support the families in the darkest moments of their life, quite frankly.
So I'm going to go ahead and take two more questions. Okay. Jordan Smith, KXLY. At this point in time, do investigators know which entrance the suspect used to enter the residence? If this was someone who might have known the door code at the front or maybe used the back door?
Once again, that's part of our investigation. We're not going to release that information at this time. Thanks.
No Baltimore News 8. You said this was a targeted event. You won't tell us why they were targeted. What should students do to prevent being targeted in the future?
Well, that's a great question, especially in light of what just happened. If you would have asked us 9 days ago, we would have had probably a different answer. Moscow's always been a very safe community. In light of this, and maybe we should always look at it this way: vigilance, always traveling in pairs, knowing where you're going, telling someone when you arrive, and just that kind of general awareness. Maybe we should, as a community, have always been doing that. You know, in some ways, this took our innocence. I would tell students that you need to stay with a friend. I know that the university staff is looking at different options to increase some of the safety on campus and providing certain options to students. So, yeah, going forward, there's a lot of things that maybe we wish we would have done before, but we need to start doing now.
I'm going to go ahead and close, but we do want to let our community know that we do care. We do want to provide a safe environment. We will continue to work hard and we'll continue to do everything we can. We want people to be vigilant. We want people to report anything suspicious to us. Let us get there and handle it. But we are here to provide that safety. So I want to thank you today for coming, and I appreciate your questions.
At Lowe's, every pro is an MVP to us.
Oh my God, that was loud on my end. I don't know if it was loud on y'all's end. Sorry, I was not looking at chat. I was listening and I was looking up something else for this case. I get why creators get sidetracked and stuff because there's so much. Because you'll hear something like in a press conference and you go to look it up and you're like, fuck, you get stuck in it and you're listening and you can't respond to chat. It's hard. And people subs get mad at creators. I've noticed for that. They get mad at share, but it's stupid to get mad at someone for that. Because I get it now, but I guess you got to go through it to understand it, or I don't know. But people need to shut the fuck up. Yeah, Turkey Way, I don't know if you're still here. I'm Eastern time, so if you notice, you can look at my people always go live during the day, like lunchtime on, kind of, because those are the best times for me usually. But I got a couple of cases that I want to get some stuff on, before I start anything else, like the Jamie Valdez case. I'm going to do it this afternoon. I may have to change it. I don't know. It depends on how I feel again, because I've been feeling the best. And but I am going to do that one either tonight or tomorrow morning. I wanted to do this press conference that we just done, so I got that one marked off the list. Yeah, Kimmy, I usually go live early while you're in school with your baby. Tokyo still here? Or Amber? Yeah, I haven't been feeling good, Kimmy Kim. The weather here changed too. It's gotten cold, like really cold. It's warming up now though, but it got really cold for like 3 days, nights. It sucked, and I think that fucked with me because it's been really, really hot. you know, then it goes like completely cold. It was, oh my God, I had to break out my heaters. That's how cold it got. Oh, okay, Kimmy Kim. Yeah, I don't feel good. But I want to end this one because all I want to do is do that press. Hold on, I think, maybe not. Squirrel. I found a news cast thing I wanted to share. What the fuck? I can't believe I seen that on the tab. It says a former FBI agent discusses key evidence in University of Idaho student killings. CBS News. I should probably sub up to them. I don't need no fucking notification signing up, but hold on. I want a fucking copy. What the fuck, dude? Yes, I do talk to myself sometimes, but it gets me there. Gotta talk yourself through it. Hey, Yanni, I love you. Oh yeah, I done got everything settled now. I'm not gonna make it full screen. I like to leave it like this, you know, so CBS News can get credit and stuff. And could y'all please drop the link to this video, not the whole channel, to this video? I guess and the channel, fuck, I don't know.
It has been more than a week since 4 University of Idaho students were found stabbed to death in a home near campus, and police have not identified who killed them. 3 of the victims lived at the house where the attack occurred. The 4th was there visiting his girlfriend. Police believe they were targeted. With us now is retired agent and former FBI profiler Mary Ellen O'Toole. She's the director of George Mason University's Forensic Science Program. Mary Ellen, it's great to talk to you again, although sadly, tragically, we're always talking to you when something horrific has happened. So when you look at this story, Mary Ellen, what sticks out to you about this case and what investigators are looking for?
Well, there are a couple of things that really stand out to me. And I know investigators said that the victims were targeted, and that's a behavioral term that has a lot of meaning to me. So the question is, how are they making that determination? And were they all equally targeted? And the way that assessment has to be made is to see if any of the victims were treated differently in that crime scene. In other words, if one victim received more injuries or was treated differently after the stabbing occurred. And that usually tells you that that person could have been the focus of the attack. And then secondly, this offender had to leave a lot of evidence at that crime scene. He was not evidence conscious, and so there will be forensic evidence. For example, it's likely that the offender cut themselves with a knife. After you stab that many times, your hand goes down on the blade and you cut yourself and you leave blood there, and that's DNA evidence. And so that evidence is going to be extremely important. And then finally, just based on going inside somebody else's home in the middle of the night with other people there to commit a quadruple homicide suggests to me that that person has likely been in that home prior to this attack, and that this individual, this offender, has prior experience being in other people's homes.
So, Mary Ellen, I'm wondering about the time frame here. Are there any gaps in the timeline from when the victims were last seen and when they were found dead?
It does seem that there's some gaps because, and that information may not ever be able to be filled in because the victims themselves would be the ones to tell you, we got home at this time and then we went to bed at that time. So I don't know that that will ever be completed, but the question remains, at what point did the offender get inside that house? And were all the victims, they were in their beds, is what it sounds like, or were they all asleep? If they were not all equally asleep, in a deep sleep, that could also explain some of the defensive injuries on several of the victims, although that's not been clarified. So that timeline is getting narrower and narrower, but I'm not sure it will ever be pinned down 100%.
Mary Ellen, the murder weapon, what kind of murder weapon, what are you hearing about what could have been used? I just keep thinking, and it's such a brutal attack to use an object to murder, 4 people. I'm trying to understand. It's just impossible to understand because doesn't it strike you, Mary Ellen, and you're the expert here, that this would be of an extreme personal nature to use a weapon like that, an object like that, to murder 4 people, as opposed to a gun, which we've covered these mass shootings, and oftentimes the perpetrators don't know any of the victims, at least in the last couple of weeks, the ones that we've been reporting on. What does that tell you?
Well, when an offender uses a knife, they have to get close up and personal with the victim. And that means that they can see their face, they interact with them, especially if the victim is fighting back, and they see the victim slowly losing their life. Here's what I'd also say about this knife. It had to be a pretty sturdy knife because it survived the stabbing of 4 people multiple times. Now, the medical examiner who performed the autopsy, they traditionally don't say, well, the weapon used here was exactly this. They can tell you elements of the instrument, but in my experience, they don't traditionally say it is exactly this, especially if you're dealing with a sharp-bladed instrument. But I'd also say that this offender, even though sloppy in the crime scene, leaving so much evidence, he was very efficient with his knife. He was able to complete 4 homicides and then leave the scene. That tells me this person has experience with that knife, a very effective cutting instrument, and that whether or not he would then or she would then throw that instrument away in the woods someplace is doubtful to me, because this is an instrument that's important to that offender. And I do think, based on the efficiency of those homicides, that the knife has been used before, not necessarily in another murder, but that the offender has used it before in other instances.
It's absolutely chilling, Mary Ellen, to hear you talk about that and efficiency when we're talking about the taking of human lives. I mean, based on what we know so far, what type of person or potentially group of people is most likely to commit an act like this?
Based on what I know so far, and again, that's coming from the media, this kind of violence is indicative of what we call instrumental violence, which is different from the traditional violence called reactive violence. Reactive violence is, if I punch you in the nose and you punch me back, that's reactive violence. But this instrumental violence is violence that is cold-blooded, it's predatory, and it's very callous type of violence perpetrated frequently on strangers. And this type of violence is oftentimes the kind of violence that we seek used by people that are psychopathic. The old-fashioned term was sociopath. But psychopathic individuals, not mentally ill, well, I want to make that clear right away, but they are people who are profoundly lacking in empathy and guilt for their behavior. And when they do commit crimes, their crimes have a very high-risk element to it because they enjoy the thrill of whatever the crime is. If it's killing people, they enjoy having it be even more high risk than it needs to be. And this was a very high-risk crime. When you go into somebody's home in the middle of the night and kill them, that's very high risk.
Do you believe that there's a threat to the community?
I do. Yes, I do. And I'll tell you why I think that. If somebody has the capability of doing this, these wounds going into that home, these injuries, these wounds were not an effort to scare the victims or to threaten the victims. They were intended to kill the victims. And if an offender has this capability, even though maybe 1 or 2 of the victims were targeted and the others were not, but were still killed, this offender, because of that behavior, that high-risk impulsive type of behavior, is capable of repeating it again in the right set of circumstances. So based on that, I would say that this is he or she or they are at high risk for reoffending.
So deeply disturbing to hear your assessment, but important, right, in the absence of any additional public information at this point as people try to understand what happened there. Mary Ellen O'Toole, Mary Ellen, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Energy demands are rising. That's why at Chevron, we're increasing production in the Permian Basin by 15%.
I'm not going to even ask you all what you think. Y'all sitting here talking about snow and eggs and meat. And just a second, I'm looking at something. Y'all carry on about you fucking eggs. You know, you can make a Forrest Gump egg one. Y'all come up with the egg one. Got egg shrimp, egg soup, egg drop, scrambled eggs, hash brown. Y'all come up with one. I love eggs. I think they gotta be a certain way though. I like scrambled eggs. I like medium over eggs, whatever. I want just a little bit of runny yolk. I guess I like eggs. I like pickled eggs too. I tell y'all, stop talking about snow, then here y'all are just talking about nothing. Y'all didn't talk about nothing about the videos I posted. Fairy Floss, hey. Hey, Fairy Floss. You already know it's good to see you. Yeah, I've had a lot going on too, and I started feeling bad yesterday evening. I started feeling bad, and I feel like shit today. Kind of like, I don't know. Like I got a cold because I'm kind of coughing too, where it's like in my lungs. But we had like 3 freezing days of weather here in Florida. That kind of fired me up. That's whenever I started feeling bad. I don't have fucking RSV. This weekend I smoked cigarettes and MJ, so my lungs are fucked anyway. I love my cigarettes. This ain't cigarettes, this is fucking feeling bad. I got no COVID. I got a COVID test. I did take a COVID test. I'll have it. Just a second. It's in my chest, see? Hold on. Hey y'all, I'm back. Sorry. Look, I'm going to end this because that's all I wanted to do on this and play a little bit. And I'm going to try to be back later with Jamie. If not, I'm going to do it tomorrow first thing. If I don't do it tonight, I might change it. So I'm sorry, but thank you all. I love you all. Good night.